Aloha, everybody. I'm Eva Andrade, and on this episode of the Triple F podcast, Faith and Family First, Jim and I are going to be talking about the 26 governors who are riding over the mountain, coming down on their horses to save the world. So let's chat about that. Jim, it's so nice to always do the show with you.
Well, it's good to do the show. People like the show. That's good.
I know. I get a lot of feedback, people. I get emails. I get phone calls. People stop me on the street. I mean, pretty soon you may have to start signing autographs.
Me? No, but please do comment. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. And we want to welcome all of our listeners on the island of Kauai, on KESU Radio, and on K-Light right here on Oahu.
Which I actually caught once on Saturday at 1:30.
Did you?
I did. By accident. I was in the car.
Hey, and for those of you listening, you can subscribe to us on iTunes now. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Spotify. You can watch these shows if you're listening on the radio and you want to see what Jim and I look like and you want to make fun of us. You can find us on YouTube. And it's just really exciting because the more interest that happens in the show, the more we grow.
That's true.
So let's talk about the cavalry, Jim, that are riding.
The
Cavalry.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. I stand and sit corrected. That is riding over the sunset. And a lot of people see that the governors, the 26 governors, are doing something that they feel that our administration is not doing. But let's just kind of do like what we always like to do. We like to build this timeline so people can see. So back in December of 2018.
But the jurisdiction of the federal government and the state governors are different. And this effort by the governors is not crossing those different jurisdictions, but we can explain that later.
Yeah, and we should, because I think that what people get is especially because I think people are really burnt out with the news today. I find more and more people
say they don't watch anymore.
Yeah, they don't.
That's scary.
And it's scary because they're not watching anybody. Like, before they used to say, well, and I have friends on both sides of the aisle. And so I have people that will say, I only watch CNN or MSNBC, or I only watch Fox News, or, this is what they do. They focus on whatever channels. But
what we do is we look at the original source documents and make up our own mind.
Yes.
Which we urge everybody to do.
Yes, we do. And we also look at, which drives you absolutely crazy, is we do look at the articles that are coming out of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and all that.
I just don't buy subscription, so I can't get the whole thing.
We were taught in school that in order for you to articulate a good answer in a debate means you have to understand, even if you don't agree with the other person's point of view.
Do you know that the Board of Education policy requires teachers teach that?
I think that's
in Hawaii,
great.
In the public schools. But anyway, let's get back to
Let's get back. Okay, so back in December of 2018, if you remember, Trump administration, they adopted a policy that was entitled the Migrant Protection Protocols. And this was because of the increase in migration that was happening at the borders, right? And then on January 25th, 2019, Kirstjen Nielsen, who was the Secretary of Homeland Security, she issues a memo that basically broke down what they were going to do on this new policy. Now, you fast forward 2 years, right? And almost to the day, January 20th, 2021, David Pekoske, maybe I might be mispronouncing that. Anyway, he was the acting secretary, and he issues a memo that rescinds what Trump did, right? So I'm kind of like building to where we're at today.
But there's a point that I think is important for people to realize, which is when Obama was president and Biden was vice president prior to 2017 when Trump took office, they were not following the immigration laws. Congress passed laws a long time ago that restricted how to enter the country if you were not a resident or a citizen. And so when Trump came in and Secretary Nielsen issued that memo, what it was a direction to the parts of the federal government that do immigration to actually start following what Congress had said the law was way long time before Obama.
Right. And I think a lot of people say that the immigration system was broken anyway.
But Congress has to fix it.
Right. Congress has to fix that. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that drives frustration among people, whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, is that everybody realized that there was a problem with the immigration system. We are all products of immigration, all of us. Nobody except the Native Americans are indigenous to the United States of America. The further you go back, your grandfather, your great grandfather, my grandfather, I believe, and my grandmother on Maui, they're both pure Portuguese, and they were born here in Hawaii, but their parents had been born in Portugal.
And did they legally migrate or illegally migrate?
They came legally.
So did my grandparents.
That's right.
So legal immigration is very different from what we're talking about,
right.
which is illegal immigration.
Right. So what I want to do, though, is that assure our listeners and our viewers that we understand that our great country is a country of immigrants.
Of legal immigrants.
We are not opposed to people coming here legally, and so that is not the purpose of today's discussion.
And Congress passed a huge law on immigration a long time ago.
Absolutely.
There's actually a law that's, I have no idea how big it is, but it's huge, like most congressional laws, governing and regulating legal immigration. And none of that is ever talked about because it's not a problem. The problem is the illegal immigration.
Right. And we live in the state of Hawaii, and Hawaii has a lot of immigrants here. We have a very large Asian population in this state, a very large Filipino.
I would think that the Howleys are immigrants
to
Hawaii.
Many people do not know that when you look at the breakdown of ethnicities here in Hawaii, that the Caucasians are actually the minority.
I've known that.
Yeah.
Since I was in kid school.
Well, if you live here, you know this, but people on the mainland don't always know that, that the white people are actually the minority here. And we could do a whole show on that.
I'm a tan person. I'm not a white person. You're more of a white person than I am.
Jim.
Yes, ma'am.
Do not digress.
Saying.
Do not digress. Okay. So anyway, so what happens is in 2021, right, they rescind Trump's policy. And obviously from that point until the month of April 2022, the illegal immigration numbers grow astronomically. And we're going to throw up on the screen right now a chart that
good chart, by the way. You made that?
No, I did not make it. That came from the Center of Immigration Studies.
I thought
and
you made
so this particular group are breaking down all the numbers.
Can we trust them?
They're nonpartisan, and they're looking at strict numbers based on what they get from the CDC, what they're getting from Homeland Security, what they're getting from the census. So they're trying their best to give an actual picture. And so when you're looking at that, you can see that it's very obvious that, prior to President Trump, even under Obama, that immigration was growing. It was getting more and more people. In fact, I remember when Trump...
So is this immigration legal and illegal, or is this immigration illegal?
This is all immigration.
Okay. So this probably doesn't include illegal because they didn't sign in.
No, I think they're including what they can. I think that in their report, they made it really clear that they tried their best to get all the numbers of people coming into the United States. So there was according to this chart, when you look at it, there was a steady increase, right? Even under President Obama. And then when you got to Trump, you kind of hit a plateau and it kind of evened out, right? Because he made a point that when he became president, that he was going to build the wall, right? That was a big thing for him, that he saw there was a problem. He wanted to fix it and make sure that anybody coming into this country did so legally.
And actually, if you look at the timing on the chart, there was a plateau when Trump first came in, because I think if I remember, the news was reporting back then that people weren't coming because they were afraid of him.
They were scared.
And then they started coming when he wasn't going to be allowed to build the wall. And then he was allowed to build the wall. It went back down again.
Right. And
that's what it looks like based on the calendar to me.
And this report, we will make the link available if somebody wants to get into it. And again, this was the Center for Immigration Studies.
So are these your green highlighted things?
Yes.
That was very helpful.
Yeah, I did that.
It directed me to certain paragraphs.
Exactly. So I did that because I wanted you to be aware of what I was going to talk about. But, it's only about a 14-page report. And I think that if you're interested in this and you really want to look at the numbers, I think they did a good job. They are definitely number they're OCD number people. So you have to be able to read
have a job like that.
Yeah.
That's not my kind
and
of
they're
job.
trying to provide, the numbers in such a way, that people are going to understand the numbers. So anyway, then what happens when you move to April of 2022, right? All of a sudden, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Mr. Mayorkas, he issues a statement saying that they are going to rescind Title 42.
Which is?
Title 42 is the public health order.
Which says if people are sick, they can't come in.
Right.
Which is the part of the law. I mean, that's a good law to have.
Right. Right. So, but as everyone knows who's been listening to any news, they know that sent a tidal wave across the
well, it hasn't even been rescinded yet. He just said they were going to.
No, but when he said he was going to, then all of a sudden people were worried that there could be up to 18,000 people coming in a day,
yep.
Right? So they were starting to look like, my gosh, this is going to get out of hand. And we have to, one of the things that you and I were talking about is that, people forget that human beings are so special to the Creator that loves them, that churches are normally the ones whose backs are broken on the ministry of taking care of people. The government might make it easy or not easy for people to come in, depending on what side of the aisle you're on. But the point is that when people are here and they need to eat and they need clothes on their back and they need transportation, who steps up to take care of them?
Well, it's interesting, too, because the philosophical backbone of the current administration is a collectivist, individuals don't matter foundational philosophy. And you can't feed non-individuals. Individuals eat. And the church is an individual-focused foundational principle. So that's why the church can feed individuals. Individuals get sick. Individuals eat food. Individuals sleep at night. Groups of people do because the individuals are doing it. It's not because of the group.
In the Bible, you have a story that Jesus tells, right, of an immigrant who ends up beaten and robbed and lying on the side of the road.
He was a Samaritan.
He didn't live in the place where he was attacked and brutalized, okay? So
I thought he was traveling. He wasn't moving.
But
anyway,
we don't know. We don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us that.
I've heard the story a million times. I've always thought he was a traveler.
Well, you assumed because it doesn't say in there. It just tells you what his ethnicity is.
He was not home.
Right. And so what was Jesus asking us to do? Was not to step over him and to say, you know what, they got to fix their border issues. That I think that we lose ourselves sometimes as a church in getting into an argument on
but they're two
bigger
different
issue.
jurisdictions.
Yes.
The government's supposed to protect the church from the problem by securing the border. When they don't do it, the church is supposed to help the individual people.
Okay, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is that the church will not turn its blind eye when somebody needs aid. So we can argue all day on whether we like what the government's doing in regards to immigration or not. We can fight about that all day. But what we cannot fight about is when a human being needs something. Then the church is normally the one. And that was my point. The church.
There's a little $5 food land card. What do you want to do with it?
The first person that comments below, Jim will send that to you. Okay, so anyway.
That's pretty funny. It's still there. Anyway, go ahead.
The church will rise to take care of people in need. That's what we do. And I think that that's why it bothers me in a lot of these conversations that people don't try to find out how we can make a difference when people are in need rather than fighting about so the law needs to be fixed. Okay, there is
and I'm a lobbyist and I'm all about fixing laws.
And we have to do that too. But then of course, we have to make sure that the government on the other hand isn't saying, well, let's punish the churches, right? Because did we not have this conversation before about they wanted to tax the churches, right?
Correct.
They want to get rid of that 501c3 status. Well, the church uses its money to put back into the community.
Correct. Which is why it is always defeated. The argument is, no, they give way more than they get, so let's keep it going.
Right. Okay.
But what about these governors and this lawsuit and all that?
Right, because that's, as I mentioned, the immigration numbers start going out of control, and all of a sudden people are stuck. The churches are rising. They're having to take care of all these people. But going back to what you do as a leader of a state is you've got to make sure that the people coming into your state are well taken care of. And suddenly your tools are all taken away and you have a problem that you have to deal with. So,
well, and remember, when Obama was president, the state of Arizona's governor tried to do immigration control of his own, and they got sued, and he lost in court because immigration, the border, is specifically federal jurisdiction. States do not have jurisdiction. And so with that as a backdrop, these governors got together, and this other group of governors filed lawsuits. Go ahead.
So they file lawsuits because they want to be able to take care of the people in their state. And they realize that not only are the churches' backs are broken on having to take care of all of this situation, there's too much. You can only do so much. And so, of course, you've got these governors. They get 26 of them get together, and they decide they're going to form a strike force to handle this. Okay,
border strike force, which is a little bit funny because they can't do border. Because that's been decided by the Supreme Court. Border is federal government. They call it the Border Strike Force, and they get all kinds of really interesting news coverage. But if you read their statement of what their jurisdiction is, it's really about the people that came over the border already. In other words, they're not stopping anybody at the border. They're not doing the federal government's job. But what they are doing is their crime prevention job and their crime punishment job, focusing on the people with one tootsie over the line.
And then in adding to all this, you have Governor Abbott, who decides that he's going to start asking them, would you like to go to Washington and see our nation's capital?
For free.
And several hundred people that are crossing the border are like, sign me up. I want to do this. And if you're reading all the news story, and if you're paying attention, what's happening is they get to Washington. Some of them may end up staying there, but now they have volunteers meeting them there. In fact, one of the articles I read said it was a church that had to open their basement to bring these people in to process them, to feed them. So again, the church is the one rising up, to do all
racism, slavery was beaten down by the Christian church in America. That's just a fact. Hospitals across Europe were created by the Christian church. Universities, same thing. Well, absolutely.
And it's very obvious to watch, even what's happening in Ukraine. You see people as they're escaping this war-torn country, that they're having to go to these other neighboring countries to take care of them. So we may be experiencing that here in the United States, but there are some of the bordering states around Ukraine that are also having to deal with this. So, we just have to give props to the churches and the people that are on the front line.
So support your church efforts to actually feed, clothe, house, and treat sick people, no matter where they came from or how they got here. But at the same time, let your legislators in Congress know you want the immigration system fixed. Absolutely. We can't have a country if we don't have a secure border.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the issues that you definitely have some thoughts are, so on April 25th, what happens is then you have a federal district court judge in Louisiana that comes out and...
Well, so these 26 governors are not all the same governors in the lawsuit. Some of them are in the lawsuit, but a lawsuit was filed prior to the strike force getting announced. But they could be working together, but it's not obvious.
And the lawsuit was
And the lawsuit asked the federal court to stop the federal government in the Biden administration today from eliminating the Title 42 restriction on access to the country if you are ill. Because it's important for the health of the people that are in the country that we control immigration on the basis of illness, sickness, contagion. And of course, COVID is still so bad, according to the Biden administration, that we have to wear masks on airplanes with the best filtering system and the safest breathing air anywhere because it's in the airplane, blah, blah, blah. Yet at the same time, the Biden administration wants to eliminate protecting us at the southern border based on sickness. It's crazy, non-logical government activity. Anyway, so these governors said, federal court, the law is the law, and we're going to be inundated with sick people if the federal government, with their job at the border, doesn't enforce this law. Would you please enter a temporary restraining order ordering that they don't discontinue Title 42 requirements. But the truth is, the federal government, since the announcement, has been having the Border Patrol not enforce Title 42 in advance of the official day. So that was part of the evidence for the hearing. The court did order a temporary restraining order, but that by federal court rule is about a 2-week order. And within the 2 weeks, there has to be another hearing with expert testimony, in-person testimony called a preliminary injunction hearing.
And that's what's taking place right now.
What's taking place so that it can be continued for longer than the 2-week temporary restraining order. So jumping up and down over 2 weeks isn't as exciting as jumping up and down over until the case is over and there's a permanent resolution of the issue. But I think it is interesting that a federal judge looking at the temporary restraining order evidence thought that the standard was met. And the standard to get a temporary restraining order is that you are likely to win on the merits of the case, because what you're asking for is probably the right thing under this case terms. So because I'm a lawyer and because I litigate federal court things, I get really excited by these things. But don't get too excited because it's only for 2 weeks until they come up with a longer order.
So what are we asking people to do? So we give them this general idea of what's happening with immigration, right? We remind them that as Christians, it's our job to take care of the weak and the poor among us. Those that have no families, those that come here. At the same time, we need to be paying attention to what our government is doing.
We do. And I saw a story that was the only story I saw talking about something within the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, a program called humanitarian parole. So I looked it up because I never heard of it before. So you can apply for humanitarian parole if you have a compelling emergency and there's an urgent humanitarian reason for you to temporarily enter the United States. So that got me thinking, well, that's kind of interesting. So the definitions are very, very interesting. It's a very discretionary program. That means the federal government has very few restrictions on granting it. There are some standards, but you don't have to meet any of them because in the discretion you can be granted this thing. And you get to come in when you're not otherwise allowed. It's supposed to be for a particular reason, like because you've been sued and you need to appear in court, and so you'll have the opportunity for the length of time that the court case is expected, or you have a health reason. You have to come into the country to get treatment, and you're not otherwise entitled to be into the country. You don't have time to do the regular immigration process, but it's for the period of time that you need. It can't exceed 1 year no matter what. But what seems to be happening is the federal government under President Biden is using this thing to get people across the southern border, but they're going to disappear. So when their time is over and they're supposed to leave, they're just going to be part of all the other millions of illegal immigrants in the country.
Yeah, but isn't that one of the ways that they, one of the articles I read.
It's an abuse of the law.
But aren't they, my understanding is that they're giving people cell phones when they get here so they can track them, so that they do know where they are in the United States.
But are they going to chase them down and make them leave? I don't think so. This administration doesn't
need a lot of people.
No, but this administration doesn't appear from their statements and from their policies to have an intention of kicking people out anytime after they've come in. It rescinding the Trump policies was a clear indication that that's probably what they were going to do. But then what they've done since that period of time shows that that's actually what they're doing.
One of the things that has frustrated me, and I know it's frustrated other people, is when Biden swore in, he promised to unify the country because the country was so divided.
Well, and he also said he was a centrist.
And no matter, whether you voted for him or not, people were hoping that at least he would do that. And I have to tell you, in my own opinion, and there may be people that disagree with me, is I feel like our country is way more divided today than we were before. The only difference is, they're not mad at Biden because of his tweets. And they don't.
No, they're mad at me.
Well, I have to laugh because, I have friends on both sides of the aisle, and they have this visceral hatred of Trump. Everything he did, it drove them absolutely crazy. Now,
there's not a single redeeming facet of his being for them. Not one thing that's good.
No, and I'm telling you, I am so tired of nicknames. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I'm tired of people calling him the Orange Man.
Oh, I don't care.
And,
it's kind of fun.
And I don't want people teasing Biden because he has limitations in his mental faculties, and I'm being nice. Okay, by saying that.
Well, I have limitations in my mental faculties.
I'll tell you what, more and more.
But I'm no Joe Biden.
More and more as I'm watching people, and maybe it's just because, and you and I are so different because you look at everything in a black and white factual, give me the facts, right? You're big about that. And I'm more like, no, let's look into the deep heart of the person and find out what makes them tick because Jesus loves them. But at the same time, I have to tell you, I go through this Jekyll and Hyde thing with myself. As I'm thinking about these things, it's like, stop saying that, he's crazy. He's not crazy. Jesus loves him, but he's crazy. And I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people are so frustrated. So final word, Jim.
So I'm trying to remember, we did a show where we interviewed a psychiatrist. I forget his name, very quiet guy. You might want to talk to him if you're having these
Are you talking about Dr. Acamini?
Yes.
We should have Dr. Acamini back on the show. Dr. Acamini, can you stop myself from talking to myself? Well, myself is reminding me that we only have a little bit of time here, and we want to encourage you to like this video, to share this video, to subscribe to this channel, and
Make comments.
We're not big enough yet, that we don't know when you make a comment. We know when you make a comment, but at the same time, we may not always be good about answering them on the show. But I read all the comments and I do try to acknowledge them. Jim used to do that. So I want all of you to comment right now on this show on the bottom. Say, Jim Hochberg, please like this comment. So that forces Jim to go in and look at that and see if he'll look. But in the meantime, don't forget to give all the love you can to K-Light Radio and to KESU Radio. It costs money to put these kind of shows out there. So you want to make sure you're supporting them.
Quick test. Calvary or Calvary?
I'm not going to answer that. Okay. I refuse to be corrected again on the air. And of course, you can sign up to get us on iTunes and Spotify. So make sure you do that. And in the meantime, know that Jim and I will be coming back next week to talk about the elections in Hawaii. So make sure you come back. We'll see you then. Mahalo, everybody.
Aloha.